Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Olivia, and we're so glad you're here today. Hello, sister. How are you?
I'm good. I'm on my third or second cup of tea today. I'm ready for another one. A little sleepy, but I'm pulling through.
Well, that's good to hear. So we talked to Jennifer Adell. She is a esthetician, and the really cool thing about this conversation was that she blended the concept of spirituality and wellness and your skin and like the story of your skin and how you can take care of yourself and your skin. Jenny is literally doing her eyebrow pencil as we're talking on the podcast.
It's funny when you record podcasts, you look at yourself a lot.
And yeah.
So I just was like trying to figure out what was going on with my eyebrow.
Anyway, it's a lovely conversation with Jennifer. I think you will definitely learn something about it. And it's really about like taking that look in the mirror and seeing who you are. And I think that is something we don't think about. Our skin is our biggest organ and we need to take care of it. Sure. And so it was a really beautiful conversation with Jennifer. Take a listen. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling fresh start stories. Jennifer is a licensed esthetician and skincare expert for 20 plus years and has worked at some of the top spas and wellness centers from Hawaii to New York City. She is currently the senior esthetician at New Beauty and Wellness in Westport, Connecticut. We are super happy to have you here on this beautiful day here on the East Coast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome.
We're very excited. Yeah, Jennifer, why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
Sure. It's funny that like there's so many of them, but I think the one that probably stands out the most for in my adult life is going back to several years ago. My husband was going through a bit of a difficult time and couldn't figure out what was next for him, went into sort of like a mental slump and started to kind of spiral down a little bit. That's a whole nother story. He sorted himself out. Everything's fine now. But in that time, I had a moment of panic.
Yeah.
I was working at the spa as a lead esthetician. Things were going on just fine. I had considered dabbling in social media and wanting to, I saw so many influencers out there talking about skin. I am an esthetician and I was like, why aren't I on this bandwagon? Like I should be doing this too.
Yeah.
I broadens your reach. I like to branch out. But once I saw the possibility of what if he doesn't come through? What if this is not okay?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that like you kind of suffer in silence. I have an army of girlfriends that are amazing that you can lean on, but when it's your own private family life, you don't want to air his stuff. It was really like a moment where I have two young kids. I'm like, what am I going to do if this doesn't improve? And I just used it as my opportunity and sort of like the push and the motivation to like, okay, let's do this. Let's give this a try. I was deep into my mindfulness practice, especially because of what was going on. I needed to really keep my vibration high and keep my, my eye on the prize and on my kids and how I was going to take care of us. And I just launched. I just decided to like, let's start. COVID was still happening so I was home more. I had the time and I sort of just pivoted my business to online. Obviously, we got back into the spa and everything started to thrive there as well. But during COVID, I really sort of started my own business. But it stemmed from that place of fear and uncertainty and wanting to do it anyway. But sometimes you need that like fire under your ass to say like, okay, girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you got?
You got to go mama bear, right? With the two kids and be like, I have to take care of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tell us about your mindfulness practice. Like, where did that come from? What's your journey been with that?
Well, in my late 20s, I've always sort of been into spirituality and
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness, that sort of thing. Started like an early quest. Um, and in my late 20s, I went to a 4-year program for energy work, energy medicine, and studied and did internships working with oncology centers, and really sort of dove into how the emotional and physical all tie together.
Yeah.
And so that sort of started me on that journey. But my mindfulness practice has kind of ebbed and flowed depending on what's going on in my life. But for the last several years, I really have had a strong practice of just allotting a certain amount of time. It varies. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a half an hour of, I pull my oracle cards, I do some sort of meditation and or a guided meditation, guided
Mm-hmm.
journey, my affirmations. I have cards that I write out in the beginning of the year. I read those every morning
I love that.
and just sort of like center.
Yeah. I love that. What's the relationship between the skin and spirituality?
Oh, that's so interesting. You mean
Like from
like
an
truly?
Like
esthetician, yeah, like from
yeah,
an
the energy, like
esthetician,
I was about to ask the same question, Olivia. Like the
yeah,
energetic work that you did in the oncology centers, like that also works on all of
right?
it,
Because our
right? So I
skin is the
wonder,
biggest
yeah,
organ, right? I mean, I think, right?
I
It
think that sounds
is.
right.
It's interesting. Oftentimes I'll notice a lot of things coming up about energetically, like how we are presenting ourselves to the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what kind of
Yeah.
masks we're putting on. But things show up differently for everybody. And in the treatment room, which I actually don't do it enough because I don't talk about it enough, because with my clients, I establish these relationships and we end up just talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
whatever they want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But I have several clients who want to kind of dive into more of the spiritual side, and I'll
yeah,
merge energy work into facial. So I'll
Yeah.
do sort of a consolidated version of a facial and then spend a good half hour, 40 minutes just on energy work. And there's a lot that comes up.
Yeah.
yeah,
We don't realize how much we hold
yeah.
um, in our bodies, but in our faces as well.
Yeah. I think of when we're talking about this, I think of my sister who had really terrible cystic acne while she was going through some really
Yeah,
bad times in your relationship. Like it really
yeah,
does
I did.
affect, I mean, the idea that our bodies aren't connected to like our energies and like our brains, that there's somehow two entities,
Oh,
our brain is here and our body's here is
no.
obviously ridiculous.
It's one of the first questions I ask is when people are presenting with acne in particular, like,
Mm.
when did this start
Yeah.
and what was going on
Yeah.
when this started in your
Yeah.
life? You
Yeah.
know, because you have to look at that.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting because I think back to what my life with cystic acne, and I'm doing a little bit of work myself on energy stuff right now and taking some classes, and something I've learned is that the subconscious repels what's not good for it.
Mm.
Right, so I almost wonder if there's some sort of, like, action there of, like, stuff coming up, like you literally said, like, it comes up through
Yeah.
the skin, right? I mean, the
Sure.
skin is our boundary to the world. So
Yeah.
I love this idea, we talk to a lot of people in, like, the wellness industry, but I love this pairing that you do of the spirituality and the skincare. So what's your background just generally? How did you get into the esthetician work?
It started really early for me. I was one of those kids. I sucked in school. I had zero interest,
Mm.
partially because I had no idea what was going on. I think I had some ADD, but I was
Mm,
always really into beauty and wellness and hair and makeup, always. And when I was a senior in high school, I told my parents that I liked to go to cosmetology school instead of college.
Mhm.
And I'm full of a family full of um, people in trades.
Mm.
So as long as I got into one school, they said you can go so that you have a backup plan. And I went to Aveda in Minneapolis. At the time, that was the only school that they had. So I got that college experience going away, but for aesthetics and makeup. And I started out as a makeup artist and hair colorist.
Mm.
But very quickly, as I started doing more and more makeup and was on shoots, I was asked so often about skin concerns, and I couldn't answer. Like, I had a little bit of background, but my focus was on hair and makeup, so I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't know too much about skin in particular. Um, but it really piqued my interest, and the more it kind of came up and up, I went back to school for aesthetics in New York City, and as soon as I started working in the treatment room, I bagged everything else and
Mm.
just
Yeah.
dove right into skincare, and which led me on wellness journey and all of that.
Yeah, I love that. So, talk to us about the pivot during COVID. So, you were working, you were working in a spa. Did you own that spa, or was it just you were working?
No,
Okay.
no, I helped them open the spa and do the hiring and develop the menu and such, but
Mhm.
no, it is not my spa. There's
Okay.
fabulous owners that I work for. But I was the lead esthetician, and we were closed for 5 months during COVID in the
Wow.
beginning.
Yeah.
So there was that. Um, and I already had a little bit of a growing presence
Mhm.
on social media. But then I started offering, one of my really dear friends suggested, she's like, why don't you start doing virtual consultations for
Yeah.
people? I gave one to her. She put it out on social media,
Mhm.
and thank you to her. It kind of blew up. I couldn't even keep track of how many people were
Wow.
coming in requesting consults. And I quickly created a platform, Flex Booker app, so people could just book online,
Mhm.
and really started focusing my, I, I made my work day into all these virtual consults. I just booked
Right.
myself out the same way I do work, and did
Mhm.
homeschool with the kids in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how it began.
I love that. It's so interesting. We talk to a lot of people obviously on here who pivot, right? Who have to pivot quickly, especially women. And like when you have to pivot quickly, it's like you just figure it out, right? You're like, okay, I need to make money this way. I'm going to set up this back end
Yeah.
stuff and like do all these things. So,
So
and
quick.
like, right, so quickly. So, like, what did you do during this like big pivot? And your husband is going through his stuff. What did you do to take care of yourself during that time, if anything?
Well, yeah, I was moving at like lightning speed all day
Yeah,
long, right? I would wake up
Yeah.
in the morning, try to squeeze in, but like everybody's here,
yeah.
try to squeeze in a moment for myself. Um, but no, I was waking up and homeschooling from 9 to whatever, and then I would have my 5 hours blocked out for the virtual consults, dinner, and then do the rest of all my social media stuff
Wow.
afterwards.
Oh
And
my
then,
gosh.
but like you're saying, the first night that my friend talked about this on social media, the next morning I woke up and I had like 93 or something like that requests. I'm like, how am I going to do this?
Right.
I quickly found FlexBooker,
Yeah.
figured out a
Yeah.
price, and that was that. But as far as time for myself, I really just tried to like carve it out when I could. I did have um like wine time Zooms with my girlfriends
Yeah.
Yeah.
and family that I, I still wish everybody could just live on a compound. That was so therapeutic to just
Yeah.
Yeah.
have girlfriends.
Yeah.
I was exercising a little bit, but I didn't have that much time to
No,
myself.
No.
it's hard. So how did you find going virtual in terms of consults went? Do people like what did that look like
It was
for?
great. It was
Yeah.
so interesting because everybody was at home. But what I found is I, I dealt with a wide demographic, right? There
Right.
were
Right.
people with tremendous affluence, and what I was doing for them was ran the gamut. Some of them I was helping them with their skin and
Mhm.
finding a regimen. Others, they were overflowing in products, and they wanted me to create like a spreadsheet on how to organize and categorize
Wow.
their products. And then I
Fascinating.
had others who had never had a facial
Right.
and don't plan on having one for whatever reason, either too busy or a budget or
Mhm.
don't like to be touched, but desperately need skin help, and like some serious skin help.
Yeah.
And we're so relieved to have the comfort of sitting in their own home, and
Mm.
to be able to just have this one-on-one, more intimate. I could look at them, they'd like come into the camera to show me things,
Oh, I love that.
and then we would stay in touch. So it's like I would create this regimen for them to try, and then we would stay in touch. They would text me, email me, and it was a totally different experience, and one that I had never considered before.
How has that now that you're back in the spa? Like, are you still doing those consults? But and if yes or no, whatever, how has that sort of affected the way? Has it changed the way you work with people in person now that you've had this experience of these virtual consults?
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
No, it hasn't affected the way I work in the treatment room, other than we talk a lot more about home practices.
Yeah.
And I have a larger, I can pull from so many more. I've become so much more familiar with so many different brands.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So before I was more what's
Right.
in the spa, and a little bit outside, but now my reach is much broader. I
Right.
forgot the first part of your question.
Yeah, no, it's actually very interesting because it means, because you probably had to like key into like what people could get at the CVS, right? And like you had to figure out they're not coming into the spa. You can't send them the stuff. So
Yes. And like I'm always, talking about medical grade this, medical grade
Right.
that, which that's my first choice. But some people can't afford that. It's expensive. Or some people want like a hero and then the rest drugstore. So
Right.
I really had to lean in
Yeah.
to every price point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
It is interesting too, and something we've seen with a lot of our experts at Fresh Starts is that one of the beautiful things that came out of the pandemic is that they realized that they could work virtually and now they can access clients all over the world, right? So like you were just, working with clients in person in Connecticut and now you have this huge client base nationally. I mean, that must have been really cool to see.
It was really cool when I started to focus more on my website again and newsletter. I needed to come up with emails, and I went through all of my consults and the emails, and I had over 200. It's amazing. And so I still do the consults now, but my time is far more limited.
Right. Your hours are more limited. Yeah, it must have been interesting too, because like you're in Westport, Connecticut, so you're dealing with a particular kind of weather and environment here, and there's a effects that it has on our skin. And for somebody that's been in it for a while, like it must have been kind of fun to like, I don't know, think about like different environments and different, like what that does to your skin, and you get to talk to all these different people having different issues. I would think that's fascinating.
The one that was the most fascinating, honestly, were the nurses and doctors.
Ooh, yeah, that's fascinating.
Who had a tremendous amount of skin issues to deal with.
Wow.
Between the stress and the masks and the protective gear.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So as somebody that suffered from a lot of skin stuff, talking to you is fascinating. What would you say, like, we don't give enough credit, I think, to the fact that your skin is the first thing that you present yourself with in the world, right? And so, like, thank God for people like you who take the time to stop and help people, and that's your profession. And I, again, love that you bring the energy work into it. If somebody is suffering from skin stuff that's not, let's say, dermatological, but more like the esthetician side, what's the first thing they should do? Is to seek out somebody like you that can kind of have a consult with them?
Yeah. Have a consult, and, to really find out what you need to plan, right? I mean, it does depend on what the issue is, but if you're dealing with acne, you're dealing with melasma, some of those more stubborn conditions, rosacea, you need a plan. So you want to, before you do anything else, find somebody that you trust and walk them through what your experience has been, what you've been using, what your goals are, and come up with a plan together.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I remember when I was suffering from my acne and I had horrible cystic acne, and I would go to the dermatologist, they would just keep putting me on antibiotics, right? They weren't actually like fixing what was going on with my skin. And I do love that we're seeing now that you're on, social media, which I want to get into that more, but like there's so much more discussion around how we could actually like help these people. And like it's not just like here's an antibiotic and like it's gonna go away for now and then it's gonna come back.
Yeah.
Right. There's a place for meds. there
Yeah.
is, but like with meds for any condition or
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
how long what's the end game?
Right.
And
What's
Right,
the end game?
exactly. And no one ever, not one dermatologist ever looked at me and said, let's make a plan for your skincare, right? For
Right.
like long term. And skincare is a long term thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not just like a overnight success story.
No.
no, it
Um,
takes time.
yeah. So what has it been like growing this community on social media?
It's been great. It's interesting. It appears from being somebody who used to just watch, um, and it always looked very easy. It's
Yeah.
not. It's really time consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been really great. It's a really cool way to like spread my wings and talk about topics that maybe I can't always talk about at the spa, or just different age ranges, different products, different questions that come up. Plus, I like fashion. It's just been a cool, fun opportunity, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
dive into so many different things, and you meet so many people. I've
You do.
developed friendships and met other really cool entrepreneurs and people, like you two. It's just
Yeah.
it's a great place for connection. And
Yeah.
if I had to say like what I feel like my gift is, it's not really, yeah, I'm a great esthetician, but I'm really good at connecting with people, and
Yeah.
it's given me more of that.
I love that. Yeah. Has there been any stories that have come out of your social media experience that have really touched your heart?
um
Or anybody you've connected with that just like you have become good friends with and like
yeah, I've developed some really great friendships,
yeah,
like recently have just met them in person,
I love
Mhm.
that.
which is really fun. Some of my clients, like my virtual clients that are in the South that have had some pretty remarkable transformations, I would love to meet them in person. But I've had some really beautiful success stories that aren't like announced. That's just
Right.
more between
Yeah,
us.
Intimate.
It's nice.
I love
Now,
that.
I have never had a facial, but I am a person that loves a massage. Can you talk about the benefits of a facial a little bit? Like why somebody would get that? Because I want one and I don't really understand them, and I've never had anybody in front of me that I can ask about them before.
Yeah. So you'll have to get one.
I'm very
Um, there's so many different benefits. It really kind of depends on what you're coming for. But in
okay.
the treatment room with an esthetician, you can dive deeper, right? You can
Mhm.
get into many facials. You can just deal with the superficial layers, which is great. But you could
Mhm.
also get into the dermal layers, get into medium depth peels. You
Mm.
can really create a plan to course correct, like I was saying, melasma,
Mhm.
acne,
Mhm.
fine lines, really dry, dehydrated skin. There's just so much that you can do. There's so many tools. There's LED lights, there's hydrofacial, there's peels, there's
Mm.
gua sha, there's lymphatic drainage, right? So
Mm.
there's just so many tools at our disposal that you don't have at home.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just, if you have a great regimen at home, that is your first line of defense.
Right.
But
Mhm.
to go any deeper and to see, you know, significant results, we can do that in the treatment room.
I love that. I really like the idea of it. It's one of those things that I feel like I'm like nervous about, this, especially because with my skin, it's always been whatever you do to it, it's fine as long as you leave it alone, basically. And then when I start doing stuff, that's when I start having issues. But the lymphatic drainage sounds so amazing.
Well, that's also it's important to find somebody that you connect with
Yeah.
too, right? That like you
Mm.
just said that to me. So you don't want to go to somebody who's just going to like slap on a TCA peel first time,
Right.
you need to
Right.
be in good hands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's great
sure.
advice. I love that. So, Jennifer, if somebody is looking to pivot in their life or make a fresh start or, ready for a big change, what are some wise words that you could impart to them from your experience?
Uh just start. Like just start.
Yeah.
Don't think about it too much.
I love it.
If you overthink, I feel like you're frozen. and you'll come up with every single excuse imaginable to not start. And who is it? Mel Robbins. I read that 5-second rule book that like changed my life. But right, you count down backwards from 5, and once you get to 1, you just do it. Like you just start. You just start. I was terrified to talk, like in groups, in front of a camera, like bad, like really, really scared. And I'm like, I'm just gonna start. Just gonna start. I'm gonna suck at first, but like that's okay.
That's okay. Exactly. That's okay to suck at first, and then you'll figure it out. And you did beautifully.
Yeah.
Right. I always think of that quote, the expert at anything was once a beginner. Right. And it's so true, right? Like you have to suck at the beginning, like, because that's how you learn and you try things and you grow. No, I love that. I think that that's like perfect advice. And then the hardest question of them all, what was the last thing that you ate and truly loved?
I just found these, people are gonna think it's gross. I forgot the brand, but I just found these, I don't know if it's jalapeno. It's like a spice sardine.
That sounds amazing.
It's like this Portuguese brand. I know it's Portuguese, and they have them like in like a red sauce, lemon sauce, but the spicy one, they're so good. I make sardines, like I turn them into dressings. So I put them on my salads.
Yeah, I love that.
But they're like an amazing beauty food too.
Right, because for your skin and the fish and everything like that. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that.
That is right up my alley. I'm like the salty, spicy one. So
yeah,
sounds amazing. You'll have to let us know what the brand is when you leave.
So if anybody wants to do a virtual consult with you, what's the best way to get in touch if they're listening to this and they would love to chat with you?
You can find me Jennifer_Adell on TikTok and Instagram, but usually it's through Instagram. They like through DM.
Yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes so people can reach right out to you. What's coming up this year for you? Anything big on tap?
Well, I'm looking to start a podcast myself.
Exciting.
Yes. So
do it. That's what we have to say to you. Start.
Yeah,
just
do it. Just start.
I'm gonna have to ask you girls. I got my microphone and it came with like all this stuff except the other thing you need to plug it into for it to work, which I don't even know what that is. So
that's so annoying.
No. Yeah, it's we got advice from Donna Bowling, who just said, because we were like, we want to do it, but we need an editor, we need this. She was like, just do it, record it on Zoom. And she was like, you don't even need to edit it. Olivia does the editing, you know. But it was easier than we imagined. And I'm sure you can ask one of your kids about the microphone. They'll probably be able to figure it out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
No, I love that. What would you talk about on the podcast? What are you looking to talk about?
I really want to talk about sort of like everything. I have a gazillion topics. Like I want to talk about spirituality, how entrepreneurs got their start, food, longevity, skin.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love that. Well, you have a beautiful energy about you, and it's so serene and calm. So like I would imagine people will love to come talk to you.
Feel very safe with you too, talking.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're super excited to see everything you do, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And we always love talking about the connection between the body and the mind here. So I think it's fascinating everything you said, and we'll share everything so people can follow along with all of your amazing community that you do over on Instagram and TikTok, and just keep up the awesome work. Thanks for being here today.
So much.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here and we're proud of you.
A Fresh Story is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at afreshstory.com.
As always, we want to remind our listeners that while we strive to provide accurate and helpful information, we are not medical doctors or mental health professionals. We want to remind you all that the information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. We highly recommend consulting a qualified healthcare or mental health professional for any concerns or questions you may have. Remember, we are a podcast, but we are not licensed medical professionals. Always consult with your healthcare provider for any medical decisions. And as a gentle reminder, all opinions are our guests and do not necessarily reflect our own.